Morning, everyone. Everything new under the sun. What is the Temple Mount? So this is another in the series of What Is videos. Now, this seems like an obvious question. Well, the Temple Mount is the place where the temple stood, or where it supposedly stood. And it's the place where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is in the Dome of the Rock, just like the image there. So what exactly is the Temple Mount? Well, let's define it. Let's take a look at what it is, why it's seen as holy by various religions and faiths, and let's just learn about it a little bit. So this is from a website, myjewishlearning.com. I'll put the link in the description. But the question is, what is the Temple Mount? So the Temple Mount refers to the elevated plaza above the Western Wall in Jerusalem that was the site of both Judaism's ancient temples, the first and the second temple. The site is also the third holiest in Islam after Mecca and Medina. This is where the interfaith, the monotheistic religions, and the tension from that comes into play. It says at present the site is under the Israeli sovereignty, but it is administered by the Muslim Waqf, the religious trust, and that's managed out of Jordan. Jews and other non-Muslims are permitted to visit, but Jewish prayer is forbidden there. For long contested by a small number of Israeli Jews who oppose Muslim control of the site, violence has flared recently at the site on numerous occasions, and the Israeli forces sometimes restrict access to Muslims at times of elevated tensions. So Muslims aren't usually restricted. Usually it's the Jews. The Jews aren't allowed to pray there. If they pray there, if they sway at all, move their head back and forth like they do when they're at the Western Wall, they will be quickly removed from the Temple Mount. So the question is, why is the Temple Mount holy to Jews? Well, the Temple Mount, known in Hebrew as Har Habayet, is traditionally said to be the site where Abraham demonstrated his devotion to God by taking his son Isaac to be sacrificed. So yes, the Temple Mount is where they think Isaac was basically put on the altar to be sacrificed. The mount is also the site of both ancient Jewish temples, the first built by King Solomon. That's why you have Solomon's stables there. And that was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. The second was built in the 6th century BC and stood for nearly 600 years before it was destroyed and the Jewish people exiled in 70 CE by the Roman Empire. The Jews, of course, continue to mourn the destruction on the fast of Tisha B'Av. According to Jewish tradition, a third temple, remember this is Jewish tradition, and also I think described quite clearly in Bible prophecy, the third temple will be built on the site during the Messianic age. Now they call it the Messianic age. That's part of Jewish tradition. So why then is the Temple Mount holy to Muslims? Well, let's take a look at it. The Temple Mount is known to Muslims as Haram al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary. It says, and according to Islamic tradition, it is the site of Muhammad's ascent on a horse to heaven in the 7th century. Today, the mount is home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam, and the gold-topped Dome of the Rock, one of the most recognized symbols in Jerusalem. And it says, are Jews permitted to visit the mount? It says yes. However, traditional Jewish law has been understood to bar the entry to the site. Jewish tradition regards entry to the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum of the temple where God's presence dwells, as strictly forbidden. So the Jews effectively are scared to go up there because they may set their foot on the Holy of Holies, and they don't want to do that. So they basically prevent themselves from going up there just in case they don't know the exact location of it. So the question is, who controls the Temple Mount? Well, this is controlled by Israeli forces. They regained it during the Six-Day War of 1967. Israel has extended its sovereignty over the site, though most of the world regards Israeli authority in all of eastern Jerusalem to be illegitimate. So this is, of course, what the peace plan is going to attempt to address. This is why there's big issues with the recognition of the Golan Heights, etc., as most of the world doesn't recognize Israel's authority or sovereignty over, I guess, a large part of what Israel would like to consider the Holy Land or a part of Israel. What is Israel's policy on access? Well, the Temple Mount may be accessed by anyone, but entry to the Dome of the Rock is restricted to Muslims. It says there are multiple gates to access the site, Non-Muslims must enter through the Mughrabi Gate, located near the Western Wall Plaza. So why is it a flashpoint of violence? Well, of course, you have the Muslims and the Jews attempting to get up there, and then, of course, all the Christian tourists who are looking at, Holy Land tourism there. The religious sensitivities surrounding the Temple Mount have repeatedly made the site a flashpoint for violence and unrest. Palestinians have long suspected that Israel intends to alter the status quo. Meanwhile, we know that news every day suggests that it's not Israel changing the status quo. It's, in fact, the Muslims by attempting to build more places of worship there. So they are the ones changing the status quo, but of course they suggest that the Jews are changing the status quo themselves, and that's generally not the case. Why are some Israeli Jews pushing for greater access to the site? And this is part of the prophetic picture. Efforts to secure Jewish prayer rights at the Temple Mount have gained traction in recent years. Despite the mainstream rabbinic opinion that Jews should not set foot there, a number of rabbis have issued contrary rulings saying that visitation and prayer should be permitted. And by some estimates, the number of Jewish visitors have vastly increased. So this is the increasing recognition of the Temple Mount and the want for the Jewish people, the religious, to be able to go up there and pray. And this leads to, of course, the want for the Jewish public, the rabbis, etc., to increase the calls for a push to rebuild the Third Temple. And we know that we will be rebuilt because the Antichrist figure sits on the throne in the rebuilt temple, stops the sacrifices that had started, likely at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. And that 7-year tribulation, I think, is going to happen in the next couple of years here, likely in the year 2021. That's what I think, based on Bible prophecy at this point in time. And so that is a little overview of what is the Temple Mount, who has interests there, and I will put the link in the description so you can go check it out for yourselves. But a little what is video about the Temple Mount. Hopefully that gives you some history, some background, some understanding as to why there's so much conflict on this site throughout the history of the world, really. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there, and we'll see you in the next What Is video.